All right. We'll give folks another minute as we start here, but just as a FYI, for those of you expecting to see Erin Whitney, Erin wanted to be here today, but she is completely inundated in meetings in Washington, D.C. today, so she will not be here. But I know she's interested in the presentation, and I'm sure we'll follow up with folks offline. Um, my name is Paul McKinley. I represent the Alaska Center for Energy and Power at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, as well as the DOE Arctic Energy Office as a hydrogen and energy storage researcher. Um, for anyone who is just joining us for the first time today, could I ask you to either unmute and introduce yourselves or introduce yourself in the chat? I think we'll ask you to put your contact information in the chat no matter what. But do we have anyone who's joining for the first time the working group today?
I'll volunteer.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jill.
Kelly. Sorry to jump in there. My name is Jill Lauren Haas, and I am the manager of Clean Energy and Infrastructure group at the Polar Knowledge Canada, which runs the High Arctic Research Center in Cambridge Bay, Nunavut. So thank you all for allowing me to join. I was sad to see Erin isn't here. I actually met her in Iceland. We were up in Ikitori at the Arctic Energy Forum, and so I was hoping to see her today, but looking forward to working with you all. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jill. Can I just ask you to put your contact information in the chat if you're willing to share it, so people can learn more about Cambridge Bay. I see H. Liller in the chat. Thanks for joining. Thomas Laird, I saw you come off mute. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, hi. Yeah, certainly. This is my second meeting. I am a lab technician. I work in various sectors right now. Currently on the IVAS program for Microsoft. That program is ending soon, and I have been working to get into grad school towards either materials engineering or University of Victoria, Canada in the integrated renewable energy sector. I've been passionate about hydrogen all my life, and I'm just trying to immerse myself in what's the current tech, the latest discussions, and what's happening right now. So my brain works around a lot of different problems, and right now I'm kind of thinking about ammonia as the storage medium for hydrogen itself. But again, I'm just here to listen. Thank you for that.
Well, great. Well, I'd definitely I'd encourage you to come to David Clark's presentation next week if you're interested in derivatives and ammonia. And we've had some great interactions with folks from University of Victoria. In fact, largely through connections from Michelle Rao, who's on the call. So appreciate all those connections and people discussing their work.
Yeah,
welcome.
I'm here to network and grow. So. And can you link me that chat next week for those derivatives, please, somehow?
Yes, and if you're on the mailing list,
yes.
All of that meeting information will be sent out.
Perfect. Thank you.
And I'd ask you to put your contact information in the chat if you're willing, Thomas. All right, I saw a few other folks turn their cameras on. If it's your first time and you'd like to introduce yourselves, I'd ask you or give you the opportunity to do that.
Yeah. Hi, I am Kelly Rye. I am the business development manager at Diesel Tech Industries. So you'll hear a little bit more from me as we get into things. But yeah, we are kind of at the forefront of dual fuel technology. So looking forward to sharing that with you in a bit.
Great. Thanks, Kelly. And Roxana and Katie, I saw each of you briefly come off mute or camera. Would either of you like to introduce yourselves?
Sure. My name is Roxana Bek-Mohammadi. I'm the executive director of the U.S. Hydrogen Alliance. We've been here several times in the past. We'd love to work with you on anything hydrogen policy related and hydrogen deployment related. We are having a national convention that's occurring September 15th through 17th in Denver, Colorado. We have some Alaska state legislators that will be joining us, and we're always here to be a resource as the state develops their hydrogen roadmap and activities here. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And I'm sure we'll be sending out a link for that, the meeting in Denver in September as well, because I'm sure that's of interest to many folks on the call. All right, anyone else who'd like to introduce yourself or give any upcoming updates or items for the group? Okay. All right, hearing nothing, I think we will jump right into our presentation for this week. Kelly, thank you for introducing yourself to the group already. This actually goes back to a meeting that Aaron Whitney and I had with Kelly and some of his team at Diesel Tech Industries to hear about their dual fuel diesel hydrogen retrofit kits. And so I'm really excited about this and have been pestering Kelly with emails throughout the winter to learn more about their system. But I know that fuel efficiency and transportation is of interest to many, not just in Alaska. So I think that we are all really eager to hear what you guys are doing in Edmonton. So with that, Kelly, I'm going to turn it over to you. I know you got to briefly introduce yourself, but if you have anything else, the floor is yours. And I think
awesome.
Yep.
Okay, yeah,
Yep.
give me 2 seconds here. I will start the show. All right, if you can see that, please let me know. I cannot see the other screen.
You can see it.
Awesome, right on. Well, yeah, thank you everyone for having me to my first working group. So I guess to get right into it, yeah, I am Kelly Rye. As I mentioned, I am the business development manager here at Diesel Tech Industries. So a little bit about Diesel Tech to start off. We're a subsidiary of Diesel Tech Truck Repair. We just celebrated our 25th year in business. DTI was founded in 2005. And we've taken on multiple challenges in the trucking industry. That's kind of more or less on the mandated side of things. And it all kind of started around the positive air shutdown. And we are a full multidisciplinary engineering team. So we have firmware, software, control process engineering, mechanical engineering. We are a PEGA certified as well, so a full engineering firm at this point. So we've been able to work at a very fast pace through most of our products, and it's all rooted around the idea of reading and interpreting engine data and then performing an action. So just to highlight a few things that we have. So we do have a full product lineup, like I said, through many different avenues. So we have the Guardian EPAS, which is emergency positive air shutdown. So in the event of hydrocarbons entering the motor, turn the key off, engine runs away. This prevents any engines from having catastrophic failures. We got into the market of the hours of service, so our Guardian E-Log. So we were first in Alberta, second in Canada to be Transport Canada certified, which led us down a pretty interesting avenue when we started the whole development of this. There was nothing out there that would simulate a truck other than being in a truck. So our team ended up making the Guardian ECU simulator, truck in a box, which was really an interesting model because we ended up selling it to all 3 certifying bodies, getting Transport Canada approved, and then also helping other ELD companies get that approval and doing their own in-house testing as well. So we sold them across the market. We did a fun project for SMS equipment, the Guardian Turbo Timer. So just allowing the yellow iron to cool down. So it would reduce engine malfunction, turbo problems, stuff like that. And then that all led us to where we are today, the Guardian Hydrogen Diesel System. And with that is the Guardian FDL. And I'll talk about how that works together. And all this is around that code stack within the Guardian ECM interface. So that's what's reading and interpreting the information from the truck and Ultimately, we just change the action that is performed. So to get right into why we're here, of course, we have the regulatory requirements to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 and 2050. The way, on the Canadian side, our provincial or federal government went was net zero across the board. The assets are super expensive, and they just don't fit in a lot of situations. And of course, growing out that hydrogen infrastructure, stuff like that, it just doesn't happen overnight. So what we ended up doing was maximizing the economics for fleet operators and giving that competitive requirement for everyone across the board. So if you're a fleet of 100 or you have 2 trucks, this is an option for you. It's very cost effective for what you get on the back end of things. So with that, our solution, it's got 7 main components. So on the electronic side, which basically operates the mechanical and the safety side of things. So we've got the Guardian Hydrogen ECM, the tablet, and the dashboard. So these are all that integral part of that. They're performing the injection and then also having the backside of the data collection and the displaying of your reductions based on that specific application. Then we have our mechanical side, which is the cylinders and the hydrogen diesel retrofit kit itself. And then some of the safety systems we do have on board, because safety is our number one. Most of our products are around safety. So one is onboard active leak detection, and another one, which is I'd like to say one of the only ones in the dual fuel space, with an active crankcase ventilation system. So I'll get more into what all these entail as I continue. So regarding hydrogen ECM, this reads and interprets the engine data. It works with the factory ECM. So we're not tampering with factory harnesses, stuff like that. We tie in, we read, we perform our injection. It works with all makes and models. So when I say that, you can put it in a Prius, you can put it in a Kenworth, you can put it in a piece of equipment. It's going to read up to 152 different parameters, which we do record, and we use 50 of these for the actual injection process. So all this is controlled with our Guardian Hydrogen tablet. So this is your heads-up display, your in-cab control center. So this is going to give you all the details about your vehicle, all those parameters we're reading. It does update through GSM. We are in the time of having cell service in a lot of places, and it kind of aids to allow the operator of the unit to update efficiently to gain efficiencies as we build through the project. The more units we have out there running, the more efficiencies or deficiencies we see, and we can kind of tailor those into our fuel mapping. And then from there, we can just distribute it to those proper applications. So this does provide the data records that sends all that to our dashboard. And with that, and like I said, it aids in that AI development. So to get into the dashboard, this is that hub for fleet management, budgeting, regulatory bodies, stuff like that. So again, we have this carbon tax that we pay, and how do we get the carbon credits back for having the reduced CO2? How do you prove it? That's where all this comes in. So we do data log the vehicles with our fleet data logger, and that's where this comes in. So we can get an average operation of a vehicle over a span of time, and we can actually base what our reductions are specific to that vehicle, which makes it very handy when it comes to budgeting and stuff like that, and regulatory side. So you're not having to hire out another position. So it's kind of an all-in-one package. So to get into how we do what we do. So we have chosen the path of a dual fuel system that is a complete multi-port injection system. So when I say multi-port injection, we're not fogging into the intake and it finds where it goes. There is specified injectors per cylinder. So with doing this, we're actually able to find the correct time, duration, and amount of hydrogen that actually enters the motor, which then results in a more full combustion and less loss of hydrogen out the backside of the engine. And yeah, as you see, these are 3 of the platforms we currently have on the road today. We're missing a couple that aren't on here. There's a little bit, not enough space. So we do have the DD15 also ready to go, in the X15 as well. But as you can see, the methodology between all these is pretty common. It's just how they adapt to the motor changes. So a few of the applications to date, again, we are a diesel technology company. We're not a specific chassis. So a diesel motor that may be in the waste truck that you see in the bottom left is actually the same motor that's in the transit bus, surprisingly enough. And then same with the diversified transportation unit and the Vern truck at the bottom, same motor. And then the other one's the MX-13. As you can see, what we've ended up doing is we've really tried to put hydrogen in a very small condensed space. Our engineers are really good at doing specific custom mounting retrofits for these tanks. The tanks is always the problem, is the energy has a lot of volume to it, but we're combating that actually with that Vern truck in the bottom right. That is actually compressed cryogenic hydrogen. So on this truck, it is a 1-to-1 hydrogen energy to diesel replacement. So we actually removed a fuel tank on this truck and we put a cryogenic fuel tank along the bottom. And that one I'm more than happy to continue in other conversations on. It's just there's a lot going on with that one, and it's a pilot project that's actually currently in California being tested. So when we now get into the efficiency, so when we talk about, there's two different things, there's mass replacement and then the actual efficiency of the combustion happening within the engine. So as you see, we are a load driven injection process. So underneath low load, we have really high displacement of hydrogen. There's a few reasons for doing this. Hydrogen is very thermally rich, very poor in energy density for that. At that. So what actually ends up happening is as you add more hydrogen in, you kind of can't put enough in for the amount of air. A lot of heat's created. You just don't have the back end energy that diesel has. But what we're able to do is still continue through most of the load range to enable that aided combustion kind of past that 50% mass replacement, which helps big time on how these motors run. And as you, this is just kind of depicting so you can kind of see the crossover. So it's constantly adapting to driving styles, load ranges, stuff like that. It's not just, this is what we put in at this time. It's constantly adapting to what the driver needs in the truck. So this is an actual flow rate chart. This is actually taken off the Volvo D13 at 1,000 RPM, 10% engine load. So as you can see, we're running at 5.6 liters per hour. We start that injection process. It's almost instantaneous. We drop down to a 69.6% reduction. And as you see at the bottom, we're ending up with a hydrogen diesel blend, averaging 1.7 liters per hour of diesel consumption. And as you see, there are the two different fueling profiles from the one in the top left to where the hydrogen diesel is. It is a little bit different and obscure, and that's because we let the factory ECM lead. We don't try to do more than what the truck will allow. And as you can see, we're constantly always ever adapting to it. And this is in a very short amount of time, under a minute. That's how many changes our system goes through. So we get into the emission side of things. This is where things get interesting. This is the testament to what multi-port injection can do for the applications. Okay. At 600 RPM and 1100 RPM, we're averaging right around that 70% reduction in diesel consumption. Reduction of CO2, we're right up in that 68, 69%. And then the NOx. So this is that heat management. This is where once we increase the heat of the combustion, we produce these NOxes. So we're up in that 74.9, 72.8. So that is us controlling that heat and managing it accordingly. I get the question all the time, on-road data, on-road emissions. There's a lot that plays in that. We're actually waiting to get a PEMS machine, which is a particulate emission metering system, on board one of these units. We did have the availability of one last year. Problem is the people installing it had a bit of a misfortune with it, so it went out for repair. So we're just waiting on that. It's very hard to get that data without that app, without that instrument. So
Amazon's sale.
So to compare this 13-liter motor to a smaller engine, things change. So this is the Cummins iCellar L9. As you can see, just in the two different RPM ranges and load ranges, we go from a 60% diesel consumption down to a 42.9. Why is this? Different motors have different needs. Our system does adapt, like I said, so this is just basically what it's able to do. So we're at 600, we're at 60.3, and roughly just around 50% of CO2. And then the NOx, it's a little bit higher on the 600 than most applications, but as you get through it, it kind of levels back out, goes down to around that 50% range. So like I said, we're working through getting these applications on road tested. It's just that instrument is hard to come by nowadays. So that is to be brought up in a later conversation. So when it comes to hydrogen, a lot of people have a lot of knowledge now, but on the backside of things, it's really the golden fuel at the end of the day. So yes, we're reducing carbon load on the motor, we're reducing the NOx, the SOx, the CO2s, things like that. But what we also do get through the combustion process of doing the internal combustion is a reduced maintenance cost. The reason for this is, one, we take the carbon load off the motor. The second reason is hydrogen has three things it does. One, it gives just energy, right? Propulsion. The other two things it does is, one, the exhaust through combustion becomes water. Water turns to steam. Steam in a diesel motor is not a problem. We've been doing water injection for lowering intake air temperatures for years, and the amount of water that's induced back into the motor is very minimal. But that water now becomes steam. Steam is amazing at breaking down carbon. So these motors that are running DEFs, SCR systems, and pretty much all tier 4 engines at that, have a lot of problems with carbon. So we're breaking it down because it's recirculating that carbon back through the intake. We're getting a lot of problems that way. It's really abrasive. On the other side, we've got the emission systems. So those, same thing, carbon, right? It clogs up. We got to burn it away. You can only do so much. But what diesel or hydrogen actually does in that process is the raw molecule that's leaving the combustion chamber that hasn't been converted to water as an exhaust is actually a raw molecule. What it does is actually hits these emission systems and it catalyzes. So it actually creates a hotter burn inside, which then alleviates the use of DEF fluid by up to around that 50-60% use of DEF fluid is reduced, and it's cleaning these cans out. We see it on a lot of applications we do here. They come in 800,000+ kilometers, and these things are looking beautifully clean, even after a short time running at idle as they're getting retrofitted. So you're saving big time on that cost of maintenance. So we get into the regulation side. So right now, Canada is kind of, and I'm not sure for the US, very in limbo with regulations, what is underneath that hydrogen umbrella. So right now we are using the EC79 certified components and regulations. Our hydrogen storage tanks are Transport Canada certified, and they fall under the HGV2 or the European R134. And then we use the CSA and ANSI approved TPRDs, which is your thermal protection relief devices. So in the event of a tank overheating, something like that, we try to mitigate this by putting covers and stuff to take the direct sunlight and UV off the tanks. This allows for a controlled off gas or burning in the unfortunate event that something may happen. We also use the standard SAE J2600 fueling receptacle for ours. So it's standard across the board for most commercial applications. So our Guardian Hydrogen lineup right now, pretty much everything on this is completed or in the pilot phase. So the only two exceptions on here is the DD13 and the Cummins ISB. Those are currently under development right now. So this, just so everyone's aware, this project did start February of 22. So we've come a long way in a short amount of time. Some of our partners, so we're, just to note, a bunch of our project partners that have actually been involved in this or have done conversions with us. And then some of our connections, we're pretty roped into the hydrogen community, not just in Alberta, but right across Canada. And we're actually working on projects. So that is all I have for everyone today. And yeah, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to let me know.
Thank you, Kelly. That's a very great and efficient overview. Yeah, I think we'll just open it up to questions. Does anyone have questions for Kelly?
Kelly, this is Doug Johnson. I wonder what kind of price point you think that hydrogen needs to be at in terms of dollars per kilogram before this really starts to sing.
Yeah, so we've done a study energy comparison. So we're looking about in Canadian dollars. We need about $8 a kilogram to be par with a gallon of diesel. So if you're looking at an $8 a gallon, we need to be about $8 a kilogram for parity.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Is that hydrogen that you are sourcing directly from gas companies in Edmonton or elsewhere in Canada? Um, is that information you can share for where
Yeah.
you're sourcing that?
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, hydrogen, if you've been in the space and the infrastructure and availability of it's been pretty scarce. If you asked me 2 years ago, I would have said good luck. Today's day and age, we have utilized Lindy, Canada, to bring trailers in here. That was at the beginning of our R&D project. Right now, we are actually using Air Products. They have a temporary fueling facility set up just on the east side of Edmonton. So we're fueling there. And then with projects coming on board, we do have other companies that are putting up fueling stations here in Edmonton. Themselves. So that's on-site production, methane reformation. The company is called, their name is Azola. So they're actually operating out of Alberta themselves. So that's to do with our project with the city of Edmonton and their transit fleet and waste fleet as well. So there's a couple of those units. And the cool thing is they understand there's a need. Everyone talks about these roadmaps. We say hubs. So they're going to be heading the Edmonton hub for the meantime until more private entities are able to put up fueling stations, stuff like that. So they're actually opening their offtake to a lot of our clients in the Edmonton area. So it's everyone's kind of working together. It's really cool.
Great, thank you. JR, I think I saw your hand up next.
All right, well, thank you very much. Great presentation. I'm very curious as to how you're making the regulatory side of this. I mean, I know that you're dealing primarily with the Canadian regulatory environment. I don't know to the extent that it's similar to the US environment, but or if you've looked specifically at US EPA rules. But one of the things that we keep tripping over, and I guess I should let you know, I've got a particular interest in methanol diesel engines, and we keep running into these anti-tampering rules. And it looks like it might be necessary to individually prove every single make or model before a retrofit kit could be legal under US law. And we're really trying to figure out a more elegant way around that. So I'm really curious to know whether you've had to sort of struggle with equivalent anti-tampering rules in Canada, and if so, how you addressed it.
Yeah. So yeah, great question. So when we started out on this venture, we kind of just did it, right? We didn't start under anything. We fell underneath our pilot program for innovation. So even just doing the first ones was not a big issue. But when we started growing outward and wanting to deliver pilots for on-road use, stuff like that, we went to Transport Canada, for instance. They said, you don't have to come to us. So we're not OEM. We are aftermarket. So we're able to go to our provincial government. We went through the Minister of Transportation Alberta. They said, sure, go ahead. We just want a registration on it. It costs $20. That's all it is. And they're doing it and they're opening across different provinces right now. I know we're working on another project in Nova Scotia. Same thing. Their DOT or their highway administration said, sure, let's see what happens. We haven't had much red tape that way. It's more just on the registration side of things, and it's province to province. The federal government, they're on our side, we have a program called the Green Freight Program. They're actually funding the companies up to $5 million or 50% to put these on. It's just road use is provincial, and we haven't really had any red tape. We have a substantial amount of safety systems on board. I forgot to note on that one as well. So that was a big key point, is that diversified bus. We have hydrogen in a storage compartment, so compressed gas in a confined space underneath 52 people. That was our first project. We bit off a lot on that one. It's roadworthy. We have onboard active hydrogen sensing and crankcase monitoring. So yeah, with all these things all added together, it's really just a shift of state, on probably more on a state level for allowing it on their roads and stuff like that.
Well, and I guess I should clarify, the regulatory challenges that we found out haven't been so much on the transport side, but with the EPA or with the Environment Canada side, where there are rules that, you need to be under certain, NOx, CO, particulate matter rules for each engine, so that if you go in with an aftermarket kit, you've got to demonstrate to the agency that the things have been modified. And how did you avoid having to do that separately for every single type of engine make and model, or was that even an issue?
Yeah, no, EPA is a parts per million threshold you can't overcome, right? We're not deleting the emission systems off these vehicles, and we're retaining them. So really at the end of the day, we're taking carbon out of the motor. The big one is CO2, right? The CO2 is created by the hydrocarbon. Burning, which would be the diesel. The NOx side of things is not as prominent, but we have done the reduction on that. That's how we've got around it. We're not tampering with any of the factory systems. Everything's operating how it should be. We're just running in conjunction with it. So if you can think how our system operates on a more simpler level to explain, is going down a hill. You go down a hill in your transport vehicle or your car, you let off the throttle a bit, and it defuels it because it knows at that speed this is what the load would be. We're adding a fuel which is taking the diesel consumption load away, so it's thinking it's going down a hill with the same throttle at the end of the day. So we're not deleting anything. That's the best part of our systems. It's a full retrofit that can be returned back to stock really quickly. So
yeah, okay, thanks. Yeah, but
So we have a couple questions in the chat here. Moses, we'll get right back to your question, but since it kind of came up, Kelly, with your discussion of compressed gas storage, could you say what is your onboard hydrogen storage capacity, maybe at what pressure, and then a follow on, how does it affect the range of the truck?
Yeah, absolutely. So our system is a 350 bar system, or 5,400 PSI, right around there. So our legislation around storage on board, if it's hooked up to the vehicle, I can put 400 kilograms on board. As long as it's a fuel source, you don't need TDG or transportation of dangerous goods permits. If you put that on a trailer behind you, you do. Our system is actually tailored to your specific chassis and application. So we run the fleet data logger, which sees the operations. And then from there, we're actually able to tailor a system directly for your use case. So it's not a one size fits all by any means, because when we start talking hydrogen storage tanks, things like that, they start going up immensely. One 4.8 kilogram tank, let's say, the minimum we like to say is 3 of them. You're looking per tank roughly right around that $10,000 mark. So a lot of the weight of the system and the cost is around the tank. So we try to mitigate how much you need to spend to maintain your operations while reducing your emissions. So.
And maybe I just missed it, but what's the per cylinder storage capacity?
So yeah,
kilograms?
our general tank for most like class 8 applications, most common tank size is 4.8 kilograms. We do have many different sizes. We have 7.8 kilograms, 15.4 kilograms, 14.3. So it really depends on application where we can put hydrogen on board, because that's the most restrictive thing when it comes to looking at the application in whole. Is we can do the hydrogen, but where can we put the hydrogen? So it's always the game we always constantly play.
And how does that affect, if at all, the range of the vehicle for how much you're offsetting?
Yeah, so again, that really ties into the operational duty of that vehicle, right? So if that's a vehicle that's hauling, full max weight, 30,000 kilograms all the time, you're going to use less hydrogen because you're in the higher load range. In general, about 14, 15 kilograms on a modest, 30% load base. not a lot of idling. Will get you anywhere, I'd say right around the 600 kilometer mark. That's a good kind of area to hit. And again, it's really depending on what you do, we tailor the systems for you. So we can try to put as much on board to get you as far as we can. But again, the problem is onboard storage, which is the biggest problem. So that's when we talk on that cryogenic side of things. And I'd be more than happy to answer questions with anyone that wants to contact and learn more about that directly. So.
Great, thanks. Moses, I saw you've had your hand up for a bit.
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute. So just really quickly going back to that cost, the hydrogen cost. You mentioned that you have for it to be feasible, you needed to find hydrogen at $8 per kilogram. Just where you are, or where this is being tested, or just on that area, at what is the price of right? What is the price or approximate price now of hydrogen for that application?
Yeah, so we've got a long way to go to get down to parity. So right now, currently in Canadian dollars, we're paying roughly about $35 per kilogram right now. So it's not cheap by any means. And
Okay.
a lot of times, if you kind of looked around, it's not the production that costs a lot of money. It's the transportation of the hydrogen itself because of the density problem we face.
Right. And one last follow-up to that, do your applications use is zero grade hydrogen? I mean, that's extra very, very pure hydrogen, or are we or just pipeline quality? I guess I'm not really sure the different grades of it.
Yeah, great question. So yes, we're not into the fuel cell grade hydrogen by any means. We can cut a couple of processes of purification out. We are sitting industrial grade, or 99.9% hydrogen purity is good for us, where fuel cell grade is 99.999. So yeah, great question. Yeah, so that's another way to overcome the production and challenges that way, because the purification costs quite a bit of money on the other nines. So
okay, thank you very much.
Yeah. Awesome.
So as other folks are thinking about questions, I see here in the chat from Thomas, is there a kilogram of hydrogen storage per kilometer with moderate load rate that you have available? So you mentioned that, yeah, it's going to depend on the actual duty cycle of the vehicle. For maybe a typical, if we can classify a typical vehicle, is there a rough, kilogram per kilometer point that you think about?
Yeah, so again, that really comes down to the vehicle, drivetrain, stuff like that, and the size of the motor. For instance, we can do 10 kilometers per kilogram on a modestly upfitted truck with a bigger motor, like we're talking like a 16-liter motor. When it goes to more of a transit application, we can go like 23 kilometers per kilogram. And it really depends at the end of the day. It's really hard to define that number. It's tough until you start looking at what that vehicle is doing and stuff like that. So, but yeah, just on average, that's a good between 10 and 25 kilometers per kilogram.
And I might ask as a follow-up. So you mentioned that you have some trucks that are undergoing pilot testing right now. Could you just give a brief readout for whatever you're able to describe in terms of how that's going, what you guys are looking at next, what challenges you're encountering?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. So right now we are, we're just on the point to deliver both Edmonton, City of Edmonton assets back. So it's a transit bus and a waste collections truck. Those ones we've gone pretty far on those. We had a bit of a breakthrough on them. So full transparency, hydrogen in the combustion process. If anyone knows diesel, you get diesel in your oil. How does that happen? It's called ring slip. So it actually goes past the piston rings. So hydrogen does the same thing. We actually put an onboard detection system that monitors the crankcase, ventilates it out. So we had a bit of I wouldn't say a setback, but a research development on that side just to protect the motors further, because again, that's what it's all about. We're out there trying to do the best we can. So we have those ones. Diversified Transportation has a motor coach that they have out. It's on and off as per project, depending on what they're doing with it. We have the Vern cryogenics truck that's operating in California, and then we have the Class A Peterbilt that's actually a company out of Saskatchewan for Federated Co-op. It's a fuel hauling truck. So those are the assets we have currently out in kind of out getting tested, pilot projects, things like that. We also have our own Freightliner Cascadia with the DD15 that we're actually rigging up for customer trials as well. So that's you can touch, feel, see, drive, use it in your operation. So that one's been active with ourselves, kind of going out and showing it off. So we have the current 5 assets on the road.
Great. And this goes in a slightly different direction, but I think it is relevant for Alaska. I think when we had our initial meeting, I was asking you about what's the applicability for stationary generators. Diesel generators are pervasive around Alaska, especially rural Alaska, and I know that there are analogs for Canada. Could you, give for the group, what's the translatability for these retrofit kits for stationary generators, and maybe what the limitations are when you're looking at different tiers as well?
Yes. So yeah, that's a great way to start that one. Yeah, tier based. Tier 4s pretty much can do them. Really comes down to the calibration of the motor. Generators are really nice because usually there's a power draw, and then it's called steady state running, right? So that depending on how much load is put on the engine, it goes up, peaks, holds, drops, right? So it's really easy to gain maximum efficiency out of it because you lose a lot of variables. So now when we talk tier 3, so that's probably your more common, what you'll find generators because they last forever, right? Why fix something that's not broken? We're actually working on a project right now in hopefully getting supported through one of our funding groups here in Alberta to start looking at tier 3 engines. And we're specifically doing this one for our international airport. They have runway sweepers of all things, but same idea. They are diesel over hydraulic, diesel over electric for a generator, but they are tier 3. So this is a full exploration project that we're continuing further. And then on that as well, since I kind of brought up projects, we're working with the University of Alberta as well. That's actually, we've got a motor heading there, and it's a wear study analysis as well. So we're going to put that thing through the ringer. The university is going to head the project. They're going to do everything they can to cause wear, investigate it, oil analysis, things like that. So we're not just putting hydrogen. We're really looking at what is happening inside these motors. And we're doing that with pressure taps and stuff in the motor as well. So just, yeah.
And just as a follow-up there, in terms of where we would actually see benefits to say putting a retrofit on a diesel generator, you show in your slides that you kind of get the maximum fuel savings when you're at very low engine load, and if that translates for the stationary generator side as well. I'm just curious, we typically, if we're going to turn on a diesel generator, we want to run it at its rated capacity fairly continuously. So kind of outside of that operating regime for when you'd be using hydrogen. So how does the actual energy efficiency of the generator compare when you're either operating on a hydrogen diesel blend at the rated capacity, or if you have to ramp up and down a lot, and maybe see injection of hydrogen periodically? So those two different use cases, how does that compare?
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to that, like I said, when you start doing more of that solid state, right? So when you get into those high load situations where you have a lot more peak power that you need. So generators have a base power and then they have a peak power, right? So their peak power is usually generally around that 80% of the engine load itself, because you don't want to hold peak power and run that at full maximum capacity. So when it comes down to the fluctuation and stuff, we're ever so adapting, but it's easier to hone in on those points if that's its constant running state. It's when you get the variables of wind resistance stuff that you don't encounter with a stationary unit. So savings on that would be, yeah, basically depending on load. We haven't done a full stationary unit yet either, other than what we have done on our engine dynos. But again, we're really pushing those hard. We're running them like they would be trucks. And we've actually seen higher percentages on an engine dyno in that steady state. And that's how we know that it's a very good use case application for it. The other thing that is a little bit of a hindrance when it comes to that is how much hydrogen you need to store on site as well, where that becomes now, it is a fuel source, but it's also on site storage that's permanent, right? So you more or less call that a permanent fixture. You know, like we say, if it's got wheels or a hitch, it's fine to put pretty much wherever you want because you can get away with it. It's a movable, non-permanent. But once it's on the ground, it makes it tough. But that's just regulation.
Great, thank you. Bob Braille in the chat is asking, what if someone produces their own hydrogen and they want to get a hydrogen internal combustion engine when available? Is there an engine you'd recommend as an interim that can be used with your retrofit system?
Yeah, so the one that we're really running with is the ISL or the L9 Cummins. That is our most advanced technology at this moment. That's the one that we're using for the wear studies, everything like that. And with those wear studies, we're going to be able to really increase that efficiency on that motor. Why we chose that motor, it wasn't just reaching in the hat and pulling out one and said, this is one we're doing. That application transpires because it's an open platform, right? Cummins is notorious for putting their engines in many different applications. That one is more practical for municipal. It's a same thing when you start looking at generators. They have the old style, the ISMs, which is very similar to that motor. It's a very robust engine. And it's just the ability to put it in so many applications, or it's in so many applications. And it's for, I think that motor has been, the ISL has been active since 2010. Don't quote me exactly, but it's got some life behind it. And then the ISM's its predecessor. So yeah, that would be the one I would definitely recommend looking into.
Great. Any other questions for Kelly? Stationary generators, onboard engines, how we're going to get the price down for hydrogen?
Yeah, that's the golden question. It's, you know, the retrofit kits. I know it always comes up in conversation. Cost. That's a big one. So again, we're talking application. I've said it many times. It's really depending on what you do. In Canadian dollars, you're looking anywhere from, on the low side, pretty bare bones, about 85, and it can go up to $120,000. And it really depends on how many tanks you need on board. So we have some highway trucks that are 6 tanks, and we're pushing over $120,000 for those ones. But yeah, just for reference for everyone.
No, that's great.
Thomas,
I saw. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, so just in summation, the products that you offer right now is an engine control module, a tracking system, monitoring the load and the fuel consumption, and then we're talking about cryogenic storage tank.
So
H2.
So the cryogenics is another project that we're working through right now. We're currently using gaseous hydrogen because the cryogenic tanks are going through a certification and pilot project. Those should be available to us for early 2027, actually, surprisingly enough. That project kicked off in August of 24. So that is us trying to maximize the amount of hydrogen density we can put on board with Vern cryogenics, because we have that problem, right? We can put 30 kilograms on board, but it's not 1-to-1, right? Where we can use a 5 kilogram gaseous tank with cryogenics in it, and we can get 35 kilograms. So we can get at least half the range in the same footprint of the fuel tank that would have been there. So it's a full solution front to back. You need nothing else. It's a full bolt-on to the truck. So everything is ready to go. All you would need to do is find hydrogen.
and by the motor. So basically you're a one-stop shop for all the modifications that are necessary to that motor. Does
Yeah.
that include the intake manifold and the injectors, or?
Yeah, it's a complete system. So we're adapting these to basically your current assets, right? So if you have the motor, we would send you the full kit out. It comes in a kit format, and with the way we've formatted it is it's basic hand tools for a mechanic. You have to go through a bit of a training course. It's offered through our academia here in Edmonton, or NATE, so it's Northern Alberta Institute of Technologies. There's an actual introduction to hydrogen course that we've helped develop. And then there's a full hands-on course that we've actually developed. So it's 50-50. It's theory and then a little bit of practical. And it's fully based around our system. So we've actually worked with two different post-secondaries at this point to help drive this outward. So we have the research side with the University of Alberta, and then we have the technician side, because there's always that gap. And we saw that with, if you've worked around electric vehicles, you can't touch them. If it's orange, don't touch, right? We didn't feel the same. It's not fair to industry to be, you can only work on these if you work for us, right? You can't touch it.
Yeah.
Our system, it's meant for, the average shop or the average operator to be able to look at it and see it. So it's super basic. It was designed by a journeyman heavy duty technician of 45 years. And then it was engineered. So it's not engineered, then you've got to deal with it as a mechanic. It's backwards. So it's really user friendly.
It's great to hear. I'm glad to hear you're going to put it at scale and also make it serviceable. So
yeah, absolutely.
Perfect.
And I see Bob read two questions. How much hydrogen can you store at a time? So on board, we can put whatever the chassis allows, as long as it's tied together and it's a fuel source. Our regulations don't say anything. Don't quote me on your guys's. It does change between the continent or the countries. And then emissions in general. So NOx specifically. So that's our heat management side. So underneath low load ranges, we're actually managing the heat a lot more effectively. And on the other side of things, we do keep the emission systems in place. So all that NOx is caught in the DEF and SCRs. And with that being said, we actually also combust it. We did a tailpipe analysis with a sampling system that we actually produce. We built our own system to actually check downstream hydrogen content. We spiked to a 200 parts per million for a brief second, and that was only on the actual startup of the system. And then there was nothing. So we are consuming every molecule in it. So, but yeah, when it comes to NOx, we rely heavily on the emission systems that are currently there to manage it. So, and that's why when we get into the higher load ranges, we taper off, because heat does become an issue, especially on the liners and pistons and stuff like that. We don't want to go over the maximum internal combustion temperatures that are allowable, and or EGTs at that point as well. So.
And
Awesome.
so, you mentioned that those onboard monitoring systems are directly involved with the actual fuel switching, right? Is there what's the risk of either failure of those systems, in which case you'd have a potentially serious engine problem on your hands, or is there any onus on the operator or the mechanic to be monitoring those in real time?
Yeah, great question. Safety, number one. We have many different redundancies in place, especially right around that crankcase concentration monitoring. We actually run one main sensor that's directly tied to the motor in direct stream, and then we have two auxiliary sensors that are downstream. So on the way out, when we're actually purging the hydrogen out, those ones are redundant. So those are our redundancy. So if we so we're able to do multiple checks across multiple sensors. Our system, it does full calibration and active monitoring of our own systems in place. If something isn't within sync with our system, something's not detected, it shuts down. It'll give you why it shut down, the trouble code for it. We also do back away in the event that the truck throws an engine code for whatever reason. Cummins are notorious for getting over boost codes when they're starting to they're, you know, right in that midlife, you start getting problems, especially with these variable vane turbos. So even in that event, we back away. The reason for that is we don't want to cause any harm to the actual vehicle or engine at that time. And our system will not turn on until those PIDs are cleared from the system. So we have like I said, multiple checks in place. We have differential pressure sensors, temperature sensors on the tanks. We have hydrogen alarms on board, so it'll actually alert you to evacuate the vehicle if there's in-cab concentration. So we really took it from looked from the top down and started with safety and kind of grew it out that way. So.
Great. And you very well may have mentioned this in your slides, but what is the typical blend percentage that you have of hydrogen, and how does it change as you're getting to different engine loadings?
Yeah, so right around that 30 to 40%, we're right around that 40, 50%. Again, it's really based on the engine. The D13 Volvo likes a decent amount of hydrogen in that range. The ISL, underneath those load ranges, it's a different compression ratio of a motor. It's a little higher compression. That one really sits around that 30 to 40, generally overall, depending on what we're looking at. If it's a higher idling application or not, we're right in that 40 to 60% range overall. And then that changes again once you start looking at full highway, heavy loaded, unloaded, stuff like that. The reason why we're not overly concerned on the high load ranges is because diesels have this great property. They like hot and heavy. Diesels are relatively efficient when they're running hot. When they have that engine load, it aids in that combustion. Your cylinder temps are higher, more burn. They're relatively efficient for what they are. It's when you're cold and light is what we call it. So when you're low load, start, stop, a lot of idling, that's where we have all these emission problems. That's where we have this abundant CO2 because we just don't have that compression ignition that we need to combust the diesel in full. So yeah, that's kind of the sweep. We do end our injection at about 70% engine load, but if you're running the truck that hard, you need the power. And we know for a fact we can't, the 1-to-1 for energy to diesel, like I said, it's astronomical. And these trucks, again, it's safety, right? You got to cross the road, you're full throttle on that thing, you need the power. We're not there. And you need to climb a hill, you gear down, do you really give the load to it? Again, we're not there. You don't need it for those situations. It's more for driving, just down the road, you know, we've got our load in a steady state more or less, but it is always fluctuating. So I think, yeah, good question.
And in the emission profiles that you showed for the 600 and 1100 RPM tests, where you at 10% load, is the blend percentage that you showed, is that in that 40 to 60 range percentage blend?
Yeah. So those were the two idling points. Those were as much load we could parasitically draw with the accessories on board. So we're talking AC on, we're talking get the air compressor running on the motor. You know, you're sitting there pumping the brakes to just make sure it's depleting and kicking on. So that was the worst of the worst you're going to see for high amounts of loaded idling. And yeah, we're right up in that 70% range. That's pretty much average across all our motors.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Kelly? And I think we have your, another question from Bob here. Do you have any problems with ignition when you are running a high percentage of hydrogen?
Yes. So we don't. So we could, you know, we've pushed motors hard here. We've done, you know, 90% concentration. Yeah, you start having some knock, stuff like that. We run on a very conservative side of things, being, you know, we could put more, but without doing that internal wear study, we're not going to. Ignition, we really do try to keep that, you know, 20, 30% on board. Diesel being injected into that cylinder, especially underneath, under that low load rating, right? Because that's our ignition source. It's compression ignition. It's when you start getting up into the higher stuff, you start putting too much hydrogen in, and the problem becomes your stoichiometric ratio becomes very lean or very rich, sorry. And rich is no good when it comes to diesel motors, of course, even with hydrogen on board, because then you start getting backfiring and stuff like that happening, and auto ignition at that point too. So so where we're kind of sitting today is we've overcome all these variables of the ignition properties, the flash points, stuff like that. So yeah, really good question.
Thanks, Bob. Any other questions?
Awesome. Well, yeah, if there's no more questions, oh, we got one more.
One follow-up question to Bob's question is I guess, like, I'm sure you've considered this, but have you considered maybe implementing straight O2 and off balancing that stoichiometric equation at those higher loads?
Yes
Is
and
that
no.
an ignorant question? Sorry.
No, good point. You know, honestly, we've explored lots of things. What is it? N3H2. So ammonia blending, right? So
Okay.
ammonia blending, is it NH3, NH3?
NH3.
Yeah, whatever. But blended ammonia with hydrogen, we've even looked at that. Which one would take down that auto ignition property, things like that. It would allow us to consume more hydrogen to diesel, and it aids in the load range. We've looked at oxygen, adding like nitrous oxide, things like that. But again, the base principle is simple, practical, economical, budget friendly. You know, we're already having enough trouble, you know, getting hydrogen where diesel is, right? So now we're adding another equation that you got to bring an onboard air, you know, more oxygen, pure oxygen. And, you know, you're just adding to this snowball that we just don't want. You know, we're trying to play within the means of what is every day, right? So this is basically the building blocks for us to build out to that next level of using your motors with an adaptation such as a head with direct hydrogen injection and a spark plug for an internal combustion. So this is the steps that we need to take to bridge the gap for the economy, right? We're A to B, and then we're going to go to C. Our federal government, most governments looked A to B, right? It's all or nothing, right?
Yeah.
Where we're just trying to give that common ground to help build out that economy, the infrastructure, allow for that price of hydrogen to come down, because, you know, at the end of the day, an owner operator has a hard enough time making ends meet. Especially with a lot of these bigger corporations out there, they can buy these fuel cell trucks, they can put up the facilities. Well, what does that do to the owner operators? You know, the real backbone of a lot of operations that people don't see. This is the solution, right? So that's why we're driven that way. We're a family owned and operated company. And that's how we see it. They deserve the same that everyone else does. And, you know, just because their pocketbooks are a day-to-day base instead of a year-to-year outlook, right? We had to come up with a practical solution within means to achieve that at least bare minimum, the 30%. We've overcome that by a long shot. So.
Thank you. That's awesome to hear. And I'm really grateful to hear everything you've said today. So
awesome. And thank you, Thomas.
All right. Well, if there are no other questions from the group, Kelly, I think that we have your contact information on file if anyone thinks of anything after we hop off the call today. And I think the recording of this should be posted and available on the working group website for anyone who wants to recap or send off to other folks who are interested. Any other last items for the group?
Just for myself, I just wanted to again say thank you to everyone who joined today. Listen, the questions are great. It's always great to hear where people's concerns are with the information they would like to have. If you are looking for any more information, you can visit our website at dtiguardian.com. There's all of our products are listed under there. There is the hydrogen diesel. We do keep up to date with events, stuff like that. I'd also like to encourage anyone in this group to maybe show interest in joining us for the Canadian Hydrogen Convention held here in Edmonton. it is the convention of all conventions when it comes to Northern North America. It's big. It's been going on for 3 years, and it's come a long way. Lots of fruitful conversations, lots of activities happening after. Yeah, again, thank you for your time today, and I hope to hear, receive and meet some of you.
Great. Well, we'll make sure that those calendar dates are all sent out, and I've put the link to DTI Guardian in the chat here for anyone who wants it sooner. And with that, I think we can close out a bit early today and give you some of your afternoon back. And our next working group meeting will be April 1st. And so we hope to see all of you there to hear readout from David Clark from Alaska Marine Power. And I think with that, we'll close out. So thanks everyone for joining, and take care.
Thanks, Paul. Good to see you, Kelly.
Thanks, Michelle. Good to see you too.
Yeah.
We'll have to shoot you a call now. We got to catch up. But yeah, no, thank you to everyone and to the both of you for helping make this happen. So
thank you,
Yeah.
Kelly. Appreciate your time.
awesome.
And
Thank you.
Kelly, yes, we will get caught up. So you take good care until then.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks,
Okay.
Michelle.
Yeah,
Okay.
bye for now.